Welcome to the 1000 subscriber Q&A special here on this channel. Now, before we get into the questions that you guys have submitted, I just want to say a couple of things. The first thing, I hope out of everything that we're doing here, that this channel inspires you to keep on writing music. That's the number one thing. We could talk about music all we want to the pigs, fly. But if you're not writing music actively, you're not going to get any better at it. That's number one. And that's basically anything that has to do with any artistic field, right? Or even non-artistic fields too. The more you do it, the better you get at it. Okay, that's number one. And the second point is a little bit more stratified. It's more about this whole thing about YouTube and social media in general. I hope that more of you actually start posting on YouTube more regularly and not just sharing your music, but also sharing how you came up with that music. I think YouTube especially is important for this because we as composers, we think a lot. We spend a lot of time doing this. And I don't think the short form content, although I do post a lot of it, is really the thing that's driving the message home about why it's important to do new music in this day and age. So those are the two takeaways selfishly for me that you get out of this channel. All right, enough of that. Let's head over to the first question from Al Choi, who says, is it better to compose for more traditional ensemble or unique ensemble of instruments when creating a portfolio for graduate school? This is entirely up to you and what you want to get out of graduate school. So for example, if you want to get a degree from Juilliard or the Cleveland Institute of Music or some other conservatory like that, the best thing to do is to submit more traditional style stuff like string quartet, string orchestra, that kind of thing, because that's what the composition professors there are used to. And it would be best if you had real recordings of those pieces. So that's, one way of doing it. The other way is, okay, I don't want to write anything traditional. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in writing for string quartet, for orchestra, for these kind of ensembles. Well, then don't apply to Juilliard. Don't apply to Curtis. Don't apply to the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. These are not places that you're going to really thrive in because the professors there are just not thinking in that kind of experimental way. So yes, we are writing new music. Yes, we are writing in a more classical inspired tradition, but not every school is the same, especially for graduate school. So I'd really think deeply, what do you want to get out of graduate school, and research more in that vein what the different schools are expecting. The best way I think to do this is to actually reach out to current or recently graduated students from those schools that you're interested in and see what they actually, or rather hear what they're writing. That way you can get an idea of, okay, where do I fit in the most? Because if you go somewhere where you don't fit in at all, it's going to be a rough couple of years for you, especially in graduate school. Thanks so much for the question. All right, so question number 2 comes from Eric Leader, who, thank you so much for your contributions on this channel. You've commented a lot and we've discussed a lot of different things together on this channel. So I really do appreciate you commenting on all the various videos here. And he asks, what advice would you give to composers who don't come from the traditional academic background, but still want to get their music performed? Now, when I think about this question, I think about, first of all, the privilege that I've had growing up, because ever since I was 15 years old, I was always in an environment where there are musicians around. Now I'm 30 years old, so it's been 15 years where I've been in constant contact with musicians and composers. So I have to get that out of the way first. Now, if I didn't have this traditional background, what would be my strategy for having musicians perform my music? Okay, the first thing I would do is find a listing of all the local concerts that are happening. That's number one. And number 2, after you found that listing, identify which concerts you think are going to have small audiences. What do I mean by this? Let's say you live in the Boston area. I don't know where you live, but let's say you live in Boston. It would not be prudent for you to go to a Boston Symphony concert every single week. Why? Well, you're not going to meet any of the musicians there. There are going to be 1,000, 2,000 people in the audience. You'll meet some audience members, but most of them are probably not going to be current professional musicians. Why? Well, they're too busy, doing their gigs out in other places other than the Boston Symphony. So that would be my first concern. The second concern is you need to do a little bit of trial and error, because maybe it's going to be difficult to find these more smaller underground places where there's not that big of an audience. So let's say you have 20, 30, 40 members in the audience, or even sometimes even less. These are going to be the places where you're going to have a higher chance of meeting the musicians that are performing. And believe it or not, the people in those audiences are most likely going to be the friends of the musicians that are performing in that concert. So it's really prudent on you to find these concerts in your area and to attend them. Now, when you do attend these concerts, I wouldn't be like, hey, I'm a composer, this is my piece, can you play it? No, I would try to insert yourself in the community. Go once a month, twice a month, that kind of thing. And, become friendly, become, a normal human being with these people and share your love of music. That love of music is infectious. This love of music is going to want the other musicians there around you to give you a shot and actually, at least read through your music. And then depending on how that goes, they might perform it. So I think this is kind of the best way actually to put yourself out there. And rather than saying, hey, I'm a composer, saying, hey, I love music just like you do, and see where that goes. So that's the first part of my answer. The second part of my answer has more to do with mentorship. And what I mean by that is not going to school and taking all these classes, but to find one or two composition mentors that you have feedback from every once in a while. Now, these composition teachers don't have to be teaching at a university. There are plenty of really great composers out there that have graduate degrees or even PhD degrees that don't teach at a university. So the first thing I would do is to find someone that you really like their music and actually reach out to them and say, hey, I want to take lessons. And I want to, either make this a regular thing once a week, once a month, twice a month, that kind of thing. Or you can say, hey, this is more of a hobby for me. I don't need to meet every week, and see what they say. Because when you're working in that kind of environment, it's not tied to an academic institution. It's not going to be something really rote. It's going to be something that's more on your schedule. And that way you're getting feedback from a professor, you're going to concerts, you're getting better little by little, and you're building a little community for yourself that most importantly keeps your love of music alive. If you don't have that love of music, composing is not going to be any fun at all. Trust me. The main thing is to keep that love of music alive. It's infectious. Musicians are going to want to hang out with you if you have this kind of sensibility. The composition teacher that you might select will also have this synergy with you if you share this love of music, and you will just grow and grow and grow. But to do it all on your own without a community, it's very difficult. Even as we composers are used to being by ourselves, we really can't function over the long run without a community of people around us. Great question, really, really important. Moving on to question 3 is from 30, who says, would you recommend a degree in composition for someone who doesn't wish to mainly compose for orchestras in their future? I'd love to study composition because I believe it would be incredibly useful to my songwriting, and it would teach me how to write for many instruments. But I'm not sure if that's a valid reason since I don't want to be an orchestral composer. I'm currently a music performance student, but I believe composition may be more useful to my future. All right, thank you so much for the question. Now, this is a complicated question, so I'm going to start off with the first thing that I noticed, and that is that you are a music performance student, which means that you already have a network of musicians around you that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can compose for, that you can work together with. So that's the number one thing and the most important thing, I would say. Number 2, there are so many composers out there that don't have any degree in composition and are still really good composers. I don't think it's that necessary to actually have that piece of paper that says composition for you to be a really good composer. And the third thing is that you, as wanting to be someone that eventually uses these composition skills to write songs, if you are doing a composition degree at an academic institution, what's going to happen is that, yes, you are going to think to yourself, yes, I'm going to use these tools eventually to write songs. But while you're doing the composition degree itself, your professors are not going to be, truly receptive to you bringing in a song every week for your composition lesson. They're going to expect something a little bit more traditional or something that's a little bit more experimental. So I'd be careful about wanting to go that route. Now, if you wanted to improve your skills songwriting, the best way to do that is to keep writing songs. I know I'm a broken record over here, but it's true. When Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones did Off the Wall, it took them 800 songs to get to those final about 12 songs on that record. So I think, especially with songwriting, the best way to get better at it is just to keep writing one crappy song after another until you find a song that actually resonates with you and the musicians around you. Really great question. And the next question comes from Ender Teller, who says, if I want to score films for a living, what degree should I get? Composition, music production? Well, I have a kind of different take on this altogether. Now, when I was at USC, which was back between 2010 and 2014, I actually minored in film for a couple of years. And in that way, I met a lot of film majors. I took a lot of classes with them. I mingled with them. I wrote a lot of music for them. Now, I don't write any film scores anymore today, but I had that experience at my USC days, so I have a little bit of background in this. So instead of doing a music composition or music production degree, I actually would strongly advise you do a film production degree instead. Why is that? Well, if you're scoring films, who are going to be the people that hire you? Is it going to be the musician friends and composer friends you meet during your composition or music production degree? Or are they going to be your film director or film producer friends that you're going to meet while doing a film degree? You tell me. Now, the interesting thing about all of this is, A, you're going to get a lot better at the film medium in general. You're going to understand editing. You're going to understand production. You're going to understand the business a little bit more. That's a big positive if you want to score films. And then the other big thing is everybody around you is going to need a composer. And if everybody around you knows that you're the composer, guess who they're going to hire? They're going to hire you, even if you're doing just student films. But let's say you do 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 student films during your time in undergrad. That's going to carry with you even after your undergraduate degrees. So if I were to do it again and I wanted to be a film scoring person, let's just say that, I would actually just do a film degree from the get-go and learn the composition skills as I go through. The composition skills that you need to do film scoring aren't necessarily the same composition skills that you need to write orchestral, classical kind of music. Really good question and really important thing that you brought up. Now, the next question comes from Theo Van Dyke, who asks, how can I make the most money as a composer? Now, I laugh because Theo and I are really good friends, and he actually just released an album called Messages in the Air for trumpet and electronics. And one of my pieces called Shifting Sands is on that album. So I suggest you go check that out. It's on all streaming platforms. But getting back to his question about money as a composer, I did release a video quite recently about how much money I made in 2022 as a composer. And let me tell you, spoiler alert, it wasn't that much. I'm not doing this for the money. Yes, I need to be making money. Yes, I need to be making money to live and all that kind of stuff. But if money is my propellant for writing music, I am not going to get very far. If you want to make money and that's your driving goal in life, I suggest doing something else. Do a finance degree, do an economics degree, do a law degree, do something like that, because composition is not going to cut it for you if money is your number one goal. Thanks for the question, Theo. The next question comes from Ash. Could you maybe do a longer video about composition competitions and the culture? I'm curious about what you think regarding the importance of competitions to a newer composer in their undergrad. Now, I have very, very strong opinions about this. I think that everyone should be applying to competitions all the time. New composer, old composer, emerging composer, professional composer, etc. Why do I think this way? Let's say I write a piece of music and I want people to hear it. The most likely thing that's going to happen is that the people that hear it at the first concert are going to be the only people that ever heard it. So if I want somebody to hear my piece, especially someone that's more in a higher place of power, say someone that serves on a jury at a competition, the only way that I can get them to hear it really is to submit my piece to that jury. The point of a competition is not to win the competition, okay? The point of a competition is to get these people on the jury to actually sit on their butts and hear your piece. Now, they might not hear the whole 10, 15-minute piece, but they'll definitely hear the first minute or two. And if they like that first minute or two, they're most likely going to listen to the rest of the piece. I know that's not fair to say, but this is the truth. I've been on juries before, and this is the way that it was handled. Now, I've served on a lot of juries where I actually liked many pieces that didn't end up winning. So instead of just letting their music go into the ether and these people not knowing whether anybody on the other side liked their music, I actually like to reach out to them after the competition and say, hey, I really liked your music. Let's at least have a phone call or a Zoom chat. And I'd love to meet you and just talk. And in that way, they feel that their music was actually heard by a living, breathing person that actually liked their music. So they get something out of it. I get something out of it because I hear a new voice. And over time, we continue that friendship. I can give you a very concrete example of this. When I was judging the Kaleidoscope Chamber Orchestra Call for Scores a couple of years ago, there was this piece that I really liked, but it didn't end up winning. So what I did was I actually contacted this composer and I said, hey, I really love to, get on a call and talk to you. I really liked your music. I really am interested to get to know you more and, and see where that goes. It was just a blind kind of message that I sent to him. And he was so appreciative of it, and we continue to be friends. And now he's at school doing a PhD actually in New York, and he had actually invited me to go give a talk at their school. So this is a very, interesting kind of like symbiotic relationship that can actually emerge from somebody that was on a jury and somebody applying to that competition. And guess what? Even though I serve on juries, I still keep submitting pieces to other competitions. So this is something that I implore people to do. This helps you, build a thick skin because, 90+% of the applications you send in are going to be rejections. Guess what? 95% of the things I apply to are all rejections. On my CV, you only see the stuff that was accepted. So remember that. Great question, Ash. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the final question, which is from K. Dimitri. And K. Dimitri, thank you so much. He's another one of these frequent commenters on my channel, and I enjoy the back and forth that we have as well. It's more of a comment and a question altogether about my piece Dori, which is scored for flute, viola, and harp. He says, wow, I really like the first movement. Very beautiful flute part and fresh sound of harp and viola. And it's really working for the flow of music, not just for color. And I really like that typical for harps broad glissandi was saved for the very end of the third movement. It was very deserved to finally hear them with beautiful scales in them. Didn't know you can manually pitch on 1/4 step the harp in the performance. Can I ask you how it's done? I'm really interested in how it's working. Oh, and in the first movement, there was a cool pitching glissando-like effect with harp. Don't know how to name it. It's happening when you're dampening the strings very quickly. It was really neat sounding. Overall, I really liked your use of harp. Very economic and thoughtful use of this instrument and its capabilities. First of all, K. Dimitri, thank you so much for your comment and your question. That's really nice to hear as a composer, to hear somebody engaging with my music in that kind of a deep way. So you asked two questions. I'm going to go with the second part of your answer first, where you asked about this pitching glissando-like effect with the harp. I'm actually going to play it right now so everybody can hear it. So there are two parts to what you heard there. The first part is this D major chord with this funny little looking triangle on the bottom string, the D string of the chord. And what the harpist is doing there is actually taking the tuning fork, this like long metal piece, and going up and down really fast on that note so that there's this kind of crazy glissando effect just happening on that D. And then right next to that, I do this dampening effect. So imagine they would be playing this D major chord, and then with the other hand, they would be doing this with the D string to make that glissando effect. And then right after that, they would dampen the strings quickly with both hands. So you get this kind of like, glissando effect, and then a very sudden, effect of dampening everything and quieting all the sounds. So there's two things going on there in that first effect. Now, the second part of your question has to do with the third movement of this piece, where the harp is doing this really strange kind of quarter tone vibrato effect. I'm going to play it for you right now. So what's happening here is that you see this E and F flat, which basically is the same pitch, but as the harpist is playing these pitches back and forth, she stands up and actually takes one of her hands and pushes on this little area between the two little screws on the harp here, and she pushes it ever so slightly like this, and it actually creates this detuning effect with the harp. So I ask her to push it up and down really quickly, and it produces this like crazy vibrato effect on that E string. So what happens is you get this kind of beating effect between E and F flat, because technically those are supposed to be the same notes, but because she's standing up and pushing that string in between those two screws at the very top of the harp, you get this like very intense beating effect between E natural and F flat. Thanks so much for your question. All right, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in and sending in your questions. And remember to keep on writing, keep on writing, keep on writing. The only way you're going to get better at composing is to keep on writing. Thank you so much. And if you don't feel like writing at the present moment, I have a suggestion for you. There are a couple of videos on my left and to my right that you can, check out. Hopefully it gives you a little bit of inspiration for your next project or your current project. And with all that being said, I need to work on my project, so I will see you a little bit later.